All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the CV Update. We are now at week 3 of the 2021 NFL regular season, and the New England Patriots will look to win their second straight game of the season following a 25-6 victory over the New York Jets last Sunday at MetLife Stadium to improve to 1-1 in the young season. The Patriots are back at Gillette Stadium tomorrow, where they will welcome in the New Orleans Saints. Kickoff is scheduled for 1 p.m. EST or 10 a.m. Pacific. And for today's episode, we will discuss the Patriots' win over the Jets, as well as preview their matchup tomorrow. And joining me for today's coverage, I'm very excited to announce that in addition to Anirban Chakraborty, Sid Anand is going to be making his debut on the podcast. Sid is a longtime supporter of the Baltimore Ravens, but in general follows the NFL as a whole, and we are very excited to have him on today. Anirban and Sid, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here. Super cool that you're doing this, and this is a different genre of podcasting for me. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to get this going.
Absolutely. Thank you for being willing to come on. Usually, we're really excited to hear your perspective today.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Amartya. It's always fun.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get started. So let's first talk about the Patriots. So they beat the New York Jets 25-6 at MetLife Stadium to improve to 1-1. Rookie quarterback Mac Jones won his first career game in his second career start. And they faced the New Orleans Saints on Sunday, who are going to, of course, be with Jameis Winston instead of longtime quarterback Drew Brees, who retired this offseason. And the Saints are also 1-1. They lost to the Carolina Panthers 26-7 to drop to 1-1. So just before we get into the questions, I just wanted to discuss some of the key statistics. So Mac Jones in week 2, 22 of 30, 186 yards. He was sacked 3 times, didn't throw a touchdown, but he also didn't throw an interception. I guess that was a positive. Running back Damian Harris, no fumble this time, 16 carries for 62 yards, a touchdown. Fellow running back James White, 6 receptions for 45 yards and 5 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown. And Jones did fumble the ball once, but it was recovered by lineman Yasir Durant. We'll talk more about that later. Nick Folk, the kicker, perfect, 4 for 4 on field goals, but did miss an extra point. And defense, that was the real calling card for the game because J.C. Jackson had 2 interceptions, the cornerback. Adrian Phillips, safety with 1 interception. Devin McCourty, the other safety, with another interception. And Zach Wilson, overall, as you can see the line, 19 of 33 with 4 interceptions thrown. And actually, his first 2 passes were actually intercepted by Jackson and Phillips. And running back Michael Carter, I guess he did okay, 11 carries for 59 yards, but the Jets were behind, so they needed to throw. And when Wilson threw, more often than not, it was not a good decision. And wide receiver Braxton Berrios led the Jets with 7 receptions for 73 yards. So that's just sort of the Patriots-Jets, sort of the key stats from that game. And let's just listen to, I just wanted to go over the Saints-Panthers game. So quarterback Jameis Winston, not a very good outing at all. 11 of 22 for 111 yards, threw 2 interceptions. He was actually the Saints' leading rusher in this game with 3 carries for 19 yards and a touchdown. And he was also sacked 4 times, and the leading wide receiver for the Saints this game was Lil Jordan Humphrey, 1 reception for 19 yards. And the Saints defense did intercept Sam Darnold once, the quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, and they also sacked him twice. But besides that, Darnold had a pretty great game, 26 of 38 for 305 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kind of makes you wonder what the Jets were really doing at the time, because he seems like a pretty capable quarterback. And I guess on the other side, just worth noting, the Saints didn't have an answer for Christian McCaffrey. As usual, really no one can. So 24 carries for 72 yards, a touchdown, 5 receptions for 65 yards. So that's really kind of the key takeaway. Winston for the season has 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, 25 of 42 for 259 yards. Alvin Kamara, the star running back, 28 carries for 88 yards with 7 receptions for 33 yards and touchdown. And among the other wide receivers or players to watch for is usually going to be Deontay Harris, Marquis Callaway, and they have Adam Trotman as well at tight end. So the Saints defense is pretty solid. They have recorded 3 interceptions, but they've given up 29 points, but kind of some of that might be inflated due to their week 1 performance where they beat the Green Bay Packers 38-3. Very impressive. And they also intercepted Aaron Rodgers twice. But that's just sort of the overview of the breakdown of the Saints. for this game. But let's first at least talk about the Patriots and Jets game. So let's start with Sid. So what did you like and dislike from the Patriots-Jets game in your eyes, like when you were watching the game or the highlights?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, right, to see this new look Patriots offense, especially in the past couple of years. I think it's a different look from what I'm used to, which is you log on and you're immediately kind of convinced that the Patriots have this game in their hand. And you guys as fans probably know the ups and downs of it much more than I do. But yeah, no, it was good. I mean, obviously the New York Jets. But it was interesting and good to see that sort of Belichick Mac Jones dynamic start to develop, especially in his first career win. I'm not hugely impressed with the stat line of no touchdowns. I mean, it doesn't seem like Belichick is a run-heavy kind of guy. He's never been that way. And, obviously some of the things we'll talk about later with how he's developed Brady over time and some of the questions that have been raised about, is Mac Jones set to be the new Brady? Is he Belichick's new pet project or whatever, right? I think it's a good start. I think they have a lot to work on, which is also a positive. You've mentioned it, the offensive line still needs to step up in terms of protecting and kind of getting him more comfortable with throwing passes. And the other thing too is the Patriots receiving core is not what it once was, right? And I think in general, Brady has not been in the years past the kind of guy who has, besides Gronk, like a set receiving core that stays the same in and out. It shifted and changed over time, and things have changed around, right? And especially now, it's difficult when you have a novice quarterback at the helm to throw to people who aren't really fully established yet. I'm excited for guys like Geno Smith. He's a good tight end. I'm excited for people like N'Keal Harry to keep developing. But yeah, I think
Harry is out for the first 4 games though. Harry.
Yeah, so I mean, eventually, obviously there's other guys filling in the meantime, and the running game, you have guys like James White who have been a part of this offense a little bit, and who've had some really good games. I still remember that fantasy game, I think 3 or 4 years ago, when he just popped off. Damian Harris, same thing. And so it's an interesting, I think there's a lot of places they can go. It's good to see them get a win, even if it is against the Jets. But I think I'm excited to see how they develop and how some of the consistent stat lines start to progress as the season goes on.
Yeah, no, definitely agree. So Anirban, what is your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to generally just echo what Sid said. I mean, it was, of course, against like the Jets, and that puts a caveat in it. But we came out, we had a job to do, and we did it. I think one thing that I was a little concerned about was the ability of our offensive line. Particularly, I know Yasir Durant and Isaiah Wynn did struggle in really protecting Mac Jones, and we actually saw actually Yasir Durant had I believe 3 sacks were allowed through his side. 2 of them were actually on the same possession, and in the case where the second sack happened, we were 3rd and 19, almost at our own end zone, and it was 10-3 in the second half. We were leading, so you can imagine, right, that maybe this was going to fly against the New York Jets offense, but when we're doing it against it's not a comfortable situation for us. But that being said, I think we did see, of course, a good defensive performance. So you could argue a few of those interceptions by Zach Wilson were kind of just thrown almost perfectly to our defense. And I think the hard thing that comes with that is, and I believe while I was listening to the commentators talk, empathizing with him, and I actually agreed with this. When you're spending so much time kind of behind, and you're entering as a rookie in a franchise that's just been struggling for so many years now, your instinct is to try to come out and immediately change things, play big risky balls, try to really get the game going, take the team to opposition, and that's really commendable. But of course, with such huge upside, there's also huge risk, and we saw that side of it. So I'm sure I want to go easy on the guy. His second game, he was playing against the Patriots defense, and again with the New York Jets, who have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, if not the worst. But I was happy with how we reacted to that, and I think there are a few good takeaways for us. I believe Trent Brown, there is a possibility he might play tomorrow. He's still listed as questionable, but if he comes in instead of, I guess, Yasir Durant, that might definitely be very good for us. So I think I think it's really important that we give Mac Jones some more support in the pocket against the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. When we talk about the offensive line, like even Patrick Mahomes, we saw in the Super Bowl what happens when your offensive line collapses, right? Even a guy like a superstar like Mahomes only couldn't even score a touchdown that day. So having a good offensive line is so, so important. So I definitely agree. Like, hopefully Trent Brown is back because the offensive line so far has definitely missed him. Like, we saw it against the Dolphins. Like, again, Mac Jones was good at like avoiding like making a bad throw, but at the same time, I think like they're definitely missing Brown since he got injured in week 1 because they can't run the ball as effectively anymore without him. So hopefully he does come back week 3. So for me, like, so what I liked, so obviously I'm going to have to say the defense like recorded 4 interceptions and really made Zach Wilson pay for his numerous poor decisions, which obviously I have to give credit to the defense. They were able to capitalize, and the first 2 Wilsons obviously thrown, the first 2 passes thrown by Wilson were intercepted. So setting that rhythm early was a good start, especially in the road, even if it is against the New York Jets as a divisional opponent. And, sometimes like last year, for example, the Patriots-Jets game, which was at MetLife Stadium, was a Monday night game. And the Patriots actually had to come from behind to win that game, even though the Jets were winless. So I still say like it was a pretty solid game for the defense. I say solid because it is still the New York Jets, but it was still like, they're still playing like a road team that they really do not like. So there's obviously like animosity, like the rivalry. So that was good. And I also like that for the first 3 of for 3 of the 4 interceptions, the Patriots capitalized with points on the following drive. So that was good. They actually capitalized and made the Jets actually pay with 17 or 16 points off of those turnovers. And after the first interception, the offense was able to get a field goal. And then on the following interception, the offense scored its first touchdown of the game, which was a 7-yard run by James White. And kicker Nick Folk, I liked, obviously, 4 field goals. That was a big performance. He did miss an extra point overall, but I'll let it slide because, I guess in this case it didn't matter. Damian Harris had a solid performance, so I guess I was okay with him too. I guess what I didn't like though was Mac Jones, and I know like he did a good job avoiding the turnover, and like I agree with you, Sid. I wasn't really that impressed with Mac Jones this game. I was more impressed with him against the Dolphins than I was in this game. But he made a lot of like these kind of mistakes, which I thought were pretty bad and ultimately inconsequential. But the intentional grounding penalty he had was like just poor awareness, and I was kind of surprised he actually like made that type of play. And then he like pointed to the ref saying like there's a receiver nearby. Like that's sort of like a bad awareness. And that was one play, and I'm giving him a pass because again they were able to win the game, but that was something I did not like. He also did lose the ball on a fumble, but fortunately it was recovered by Durant. So, and I don't know, we talked a lot about ball security because they lost to the Dolphins literally because of a fumble by Damian Harris. So I was not happy with the ball security, even though it wasn't by Harris, like emphasizing holding on to the football is so important. So yeah, like, I mean, I guess that's one thing I didn't really like about the game. And I don't know, it's really hard to judge, right? Because the Jets were pretty bad, but like, I don't know, it was hard for me to really like say the defense was that great because I feel Wilson and like, I agree with you, Anirban. Wilson made a lot of those types of throws and mistakes, bad throws that I feel like more veteran quarterbacks or better quarterbacks down the road are not going to make those throws. So it's really hard for me to really gauge like the performance of this game. Like I still think the run defense isn't that great. The Jets just didn't need to run the ball because they couldn't, because they were playing from down. So they needed to pass. So I don't know. So that's my takeaway. It's hard for me to really like say this is a great win or really get excited about it. I think it was just one of those like, okay, like cool, they won. They were supposed to win. That's at least good that they were able to win. But yeah, so I guess that's my takeaway. I'm not like overly excited about this, but yeah, it is what it is. So anyways, so let's move on to the next question. What grade do you give Mac Jones for the game? Sid, let's hear your thoughts on this.
It's a good question. So I'm sorry, do you have a scale or are you just?
You should give like letter grades, like A to F.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I just wasn't sure. Just trying to get with the
Yeah.
norm. I would say probably like a B minus. A very run of the mill, middle of the road, kind of average performance is
I
my.
gave him the same exact grade. Exactly. So
There you go. Yeah, I figured. I mean, that seems to be based on at least what you and I have been talking about, like discussing. That seems to be the consensus. Anirban, I'm curious what you think. But before that, I just want to add on to something you said, which is about kind of leadership and game awareness, right? I think this happens across all the sports, and especially when you're new, it's difficult. But the quarterback in football is seen as kind of this leadership position, right? Even if you're not the most senior person there, you are in charge of guiding the offense. And it isn't a great look, even if you're a rookie quarterback, when you have 0-0. the fact that it's the running backs, it's the defense driving this game, that's all well and good. But that means you have very good backup plans in place. But when those backup plans fail, it's like at the end of the day, the quarterback has that responsibility, right? So as I said, a lot of potential improvements, but there has to be some scores on there, in my opinion, for me to go up beyond a B minus here for any quarterback.
No, I agree with that. And I think just like one take on that part, which I've been reading about, is sort of like, like we see like Trevor Lawrence and in Jacksonville and Zach Wilson, like the two, like number 1 and number 2 picks, right? And they were picked with pretty bad teams. Like that's why they were the number 1, number 2 picks, because those teams were bad last year, 1-15 and 2-14. But I think in a way, it's probably better to kind of like limit what Mac Jones can kind of like, because like the thing that's the whole like slinging it out early and stuff like that, like I think like it can really impact your confidence, right? Like Lawrence right now in 2 games has thrown 5 interceptions. Same with Zach Wilson, 5 interceptions in 2 games. And I think both of those guys are very talented, but at the same time, like I think it's also good to kind of manage like what you sort of do early on in your career, kind of like put the training wheels on and then sort of take them off gradually, right? Like even Brady, like I think we kind of forget, like none of us were old enough to see like Brady when he first came in the league in 2000, and then he became the starter in 2001. But even Brady initially was sort of kind of a game manager at the start. And then obviously he developed over time and he became like the GOAT he is today. But initially Brady wasn't Brady. He wasn't Patrick Mahomes out of the gate, where he just sort of Patrick Mahomes, like instantly you knew this guy was special, like from the get-go. Brady had time to really appreciate what he's kind of doing. So I'm okay with them sort of limiting what Mac Jones is doing early on, just so, but by the end of the season, or really like by the middle of the season, I'm expecting more throws. So I agree with you, Sid. Like I am giving him a B minus because overall I wasn't really happy with like a lot of the, like, I don't know, the 0-0 stat line I also didn't like too much, but I also think some of that might come down to Josh McDaniels kind of trying to babysit the quarterback and trying to sort of see like in Jacksonville, like what, I don't know, like, could you imagine sort of the different sort of conversations we're having if Mac Jones had thrown 5 interceptions through 2 games, like the types of, we'd probably be ripping the draft pick right now and saying it's a horrible draft pick. The Patriots are going to be back looking for a quarterback next year. So right now, at least I think like we're okay with 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions for now.
I couldn't add something maybe that might some numbers behind this conversation. So first of all, entering week 3, the Patriots, I believe, are the only NFL team with an under 30% red zone percentage. It's the lowest in the league. But I want to just give some numbers here. So when we look at our red zone summary collectively over the 2 games of the season, right? And you consider how many looks a given QB, running back, tight end, whatever have, right? Defined as, you're in the red zone, you're trying to make a play. Mac Jones had 2 red zone looks in game 2. In comparison, our running back core had 8. Damian Harris had 4. White had 3. JJ Taylor had 1. That was in this game. And then Hunter Henry had 1. So out of our total of, I guess you could say like 11 red zone looks, Mac Jones had 2 of them, right? So again, this is kind of the theme for me last week, where, he has that stat line of no passing touchdowns in this game, but he didn't really have that many chances to do it. So when I'm kind of judging him, I try to think about, how well did he do with what he's been given, because as far as it's not like if he had all of these 11 chances of passing attempts and then had 0 touchdowns, that's one thing. If you have 2 attempts and then your running back core has 8, I mean, that's just the way your offense is set up, right? So I'd give him a B for this game because I think he did fine. I don't think he was really in a position to really light it up unless he just happened to be lucky and had like one of his early passes, because he ultimately was in under 20% of red zone situations. The only way he would have really gotten a touchdown is if he had like some 50-yard beauty to like Jacoby Myers or something, which would have been great, but that's not how we play. We haven't had a deep zone threat in a quite some time. I honestly think since Brandon Cooks left, we haven't had that. And that was several years ago. Josh Gordon would have been great, but I think we all know that ultimately his career in New England was cut short, very unfortunately, due to some issues that it appears like he's on the road to actually solving now. I'm very happy for him, by the way, that he's managed to kind of overcome his struggles with substance abuse. But the point remains. What's up, Sid?
Sorry, just to add on to your point about the lack of a deep zone threat, right? It is crazy to think about, just the names you were naming, and we're forgetting Antonio Brown. Like the you've always had one marquee receptor on that offense, just year after year cycling through for maybe the past 5 years. You had Edelman before that, and it's like somehow there was a way to like make this big Patriots offense even better with one star name. But you're right. I mean, that's how they play. They play with using their weapons effectively and not thinking about, individual strengths or weaknesses. And you're right. I think that's, those numbers definitely put a lot of things into perspective, but they also reaffirm how Belichick runs his offense, right? And
Absolutely.
so it's not the end of the world, I don't think, by any means, that Mac Jones had an average game, but I think he's definitely in a much better suited situation, which is why we're having these discussions, to your point about Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, Amartya. The fact that like he has that support of Belichick and a pretty robust
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like that's why.
Right.
So I think all of us. Oh, go on. What were you saying?
No, I was just going to say, like, that's what allows us to make these sort of nitpicky determinations about him, right? There are much more basic issues that need to be fixed,
Absolutely.
like Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence to 1 and 2, right? But so it's a good thing that we're getting this nitpicky level of nitpickiness, because we see the potential of him to be Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes or whatever, some sort of good, very solid rookie quarterback, right? Russell Wilson, whoever.
Absolutely. And I did like, again, that we saw we saw the idea of spraying out the ball to multiple passing options. I was looking at the stats before. Nelson Aguilar was on the field for 50 snaps in the receiver position, which is only 2 less than Jacoby Myers. We had Jonnu Smith in for 30 snaps, and I don't remember how much Hunter Henry was, but when you look at kind of the yardage they got between them, Myers had around 40. I believe Aguilar had around that number as well. So he does have the options, and when you look at, again, we're talking about the offensive line. In total, he was hurried a total of 6 times, which basically means that the Jets pass rush broke through like our O-line coverage and came at him. And out of those 6 carries, I do want to go back to the film and quantify it a little better, but from at least the moments I was watching, he was actually able to offload the ball in time to like James White or Jacoby Myers, usually again in these short kind of 10-yard gains. But I also thought that was a good thing. When you have your QB getting repeatedly hurried in this game, like 6 hurries is it's a pretty decent number. And when he coupled that with 3 sacks, I did like his ability to kind of get the ball out really quickly. And because if this becomes a bit of a trend for us this season with our offensive line, it's really important that we have the ability to get yards out of those plays when otherwise the alternative is taking a sack or an incomplete pass.
No, I agree, and I think that perfectly leads up to the next question I was going to ask you guys. Basically, it's about the offensive line. Like, are you concerned about the offensive line after allowing Mac Jones to get sacked 3 times? And as you mentioned, Anirban, it probably could have been more than 3 times had he not like gotten the ball out quicker. So, I mean, Anirban's like, are you concerned at all, or like, what do you think? Do you think like with Trent Brown back, everything should be trending back upwards?
I'm not totally sure because, first of all, I'm not sure Trent Brown will be playing tomorrow. He's questionable, right? So we're not totally sure what that means. But yeah, I think so. It's kind of interesting because we got, my understanding, we got Yasir Durant from the Chiefs in this offseason, and he was kind of meant to add some depth to our offensive line. So on one hand, maybe it's good that we have that option for depth, even if it's, but yeah, I am a little concerned because it was against like the Jets pass rush, and I kind of wonder what the Saints pass rush will do. Though to be fair, the Saints have their own. I think for a lot of us, we don't know what to expect from the Saints because their games were essentially coin flips. And though to be fair, there are a ton of mitigating circumstances. The Saints had like 8 coaches who weren't able to participate due to COVID. And even tomorrow, I believe at least 3 assistant coaches will not be on the field, as well as a few players on the Saints. So I am worried, but Isaiah Wynn is supposed to be a big player for us this season. Matt Judon's supposed to be a big player for us. Like, these are people who we expected to come back. Like, Shaq Mason had 1 hurry against him. He's considered a really good player for us. So I don't know. Maybe I think we'll just have to wait and see. 2 games. Maybe after 3 or 4 games, I can give you a better answer about that.
Yeah, I mean, so like, I mean, I'm probably a little bit more worried because I think Trent Brown really is like kind of like, I don't want to say he's the glue holding down the offensive line, but he is like very important. And without him, the Patriots can't run the ball as effectively. Like, if you remember against Miami, the first like drive of the game, Damian Harris had like a 20-yard run or so. And then they had like another long run. And then after Brown left the game, they couldn't really utilize like that area where he was essentially. Like, he's such a great blocker, which helps the run game so much. So when we started in 2018, when he was there for the Super Bowl, like the run game was terrific for the 3 games they won that year to win the Super Bowl in 2018 against the Chargers, Chiefs, and LA Rams. And that was with Sony Michel, who, I mean, he's no longer even with the team. So having a good offensive line is so critical, especially for this type of Patriots team, which still seems very kind of dependent on the run. So I am a little concerned, and I am kind of unsure about how they'll do tomorrow, because they don't really have a player like Christian McCaffrey. Well, no one really does, who can kind of just break down and like own any defense. So I'm a little concerned about tomorrow. Yeah, like I'm not sure how Mac Jones will handle it. Like, the other thing about Mac Jones I just wanted to mention is like, one of the concerns about him like starting immediately was that he didn't have like a professional, like pro ready body. What that means is like he needed to kind of hit the gym and actually gain more muscle. So the idea that he's starting immediately is meaning that like hopefully his body can withstand the 17 game season of getting hit a lot. That's one thing I am a little concerned about. So I'm hoping that so far fine after 2 games, but I'm a little concerned about the offensive line, because I don't want to see him getting hit too many times a game, because that's not going to bode well going forward. Sid, I'm just curious to hear your perspective on that too.
So yeah, I mean, again, I'm not the most knowledgeable on the offensive line of the Patriots specifically. Even the Ravens is a little, but I do know the importance of it, right? And what you're saying about Brown and specifically, and what I've read about him is it does make a difference. And so yeah, I'm sure that is going to be something that is going to be a cause for concern. But all I'm saying is, if we're going to be thinking about it, Belichick's thinking about this, right? And so it's going to be an area that they'll find a way to get around. I mean, that's just how these things work. And especially, I know from a Ravens standpoint, guys like Ronnie Stanley and now Alejandro Villanueva, and just name goes on and on. The Ravens O-line made Lamar Jackson good. Like you could say the same thing about the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, like, and even going back to the 90s, the Cowboys O-line, like the O-line is a vastly underrated thing. And I think it's going to make a huge difference, especially if he's out continually. But I'm excited to see kind of the backups they have in place and how they end up adjusting from it. But yeah, I do second what Anirban said about, like, it's hard to tell, but I do think it's a cause for concern.
Yeah, and just another quick thing. I mean, part of what we've seen, well, first of all, right, I think this is one of those things where, like, I don't know that much about Mac Jones's personal fitness, but I kind of defer to Bill Belichick's decision to cut Cam Newton this year. And I think at least, like, if that's the case, that means Bill Belichick at least thinks Mac Jones can play 17 games this season. And I'm sure that he's, I think, and so I trust his ability to gauge Mac Jones's fitness. So that's why I haven't really thought too much about that. So though, of course, like, it is his first year, but I just kind of go with his experience there. But also another thing to remember is our offense is going to be opportunistic. That's what it was in those first 2 games, right? We didn't need to pass the ball. I mean, at least against the Jets, we did not need to pass the ball. We did just fine with Damian Harris and James White. And the thing about the Saints actually is that they have the 3rd fewest yardage allowed to running backs. This is a team that ultimately did completely shut down Aaron Jones, right? Who's considered one of the top running backs in the league. And I believe, like us, though, they only have 4 sacks on opposing quarterbacks. So, you have a Saints defense that as of now has been very good against the run. So maybe this is a game where we see more responsibility on Mac Jones's shoulders, right, in the passing game. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. That's the thing we've all seen with Bill Belichick. He'll target the weaknesses. He doesn't care about fantasy points, right? That's kind of the best. Not that any coach does, but I think you see what I'm saying. Like, he's the kind of guy, if he had Alvin Kamara on his team and he was playing a team with an atrocious pass defense, he'd probably just go with the passing, because that's how you win games. It's not like some teams that play with one strategy no matter what.
And that's how you get the random receiver who gets 45 points on a day.
Exactly, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying here. Like, and again, that does go back to the offensive line. That's going to be super important, because I think this is a game where we're going to have to pass the ball, like to or not. you have to give responsibility Mac Jones here, unless for some reason we are able to show up in the run game too, which is possible. It's just that's apparently been a strong point for the Saints this year.
Hey, and if not, there's always Brian Hoyer. Just putting that out there in case something goes wrong.
Yep,
Really is it inspiring?
Hoyer is...
That's really such an uninspiring thought right now.
Sorry,
I really hope.
I'm sorry.
After what happened in Kansas City last year, I really hope we don't have to see that again.
Me too.
But yeah,
much
definitely.
love to Brian Hoyer, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's like, I think Hoyer's like a good like mentor, but let's just stick to mentor and nothing else. I won't say he's good at anything else besides being a good mentor and maybe a coach one day. But yeah. But anyways, yeah, so I think all of us sort of agree, like the offensive line is definitely a cause of concern. And yeah, we'll see what happens tomorrow. And just one other question about the Jets game, because I do want to talk about, obviously we want to talk about the Saints game and some Ravens talk as well for Sid. So the Patriots defense recorded 4 interceptions off of Zach Wilson. But do you feel the Jets overall lost this game more than the Patriots won this game? So I'll just go first. So basically, I would say kind of yes. Like I feel the Jets just made so many bad mistakes this game. Like throwing 2 interceptions. Like again, like when you basically your turnovers led to 16 points. Like I would say, and the Jets only scored 6 in this game. So you can say that the Jets turnovers themselves ended up just them like it just caused the implosion on their end. So I would say yeah, the Jets definitely I would say lost this game more than the Pats won this game. So, but I mean, that's okay, right? Like the Patriots for a long time have kind of relied on this tactic against bad football teams. So even with Brady, like, I mean, there have been games too, I kind of remember Sid, like in the playoffs where Brady, I think, didn't even throw a touchdown. I think it was against the Colts in 2013. He didn't throw a passing touchdown. LeGarrette Blount had 4 rushing touchdowns that day. And they beat the Colts in the divisional round, I think, to go to Denver the following week, where they lost, of course. But so the Patriots have actually had games with even Brady where they were sort of like passive in the offense because they just saw the run game was so good. But so that's okay, like in that context. But I think at least for this game, I would say the Jets definitely lost it more than the Pats won. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you agree, or do you think the Pats deserve a little bit more credit?
I'll go. I think they deserve a little bit of credit. And here's why. I think if this Pats defense plays the way they did against the Jets, against Saints or the Bucks next week, whoever, it's going to lead to, even if it doesn't lead to a blowout like this, it's going to be good, you know? And I was thinking of that exact game, actually, it's an infamous game for a lot of reasons from outside perspectives, but it's in because I mean, it just showed how dominant that offense was and how dominant that team was in general. And it's, but point being that like, this is a team that, as we've talked about all throughout, that they use a lot of different weapons and the defense is an integral part of that, and it's all about perspective. I think Jets definitely lost this game, but they do that in every, so even if they had decided to stop passing with Mac Jones and start running more, even then, they might, you probably would not have seen a 25-6 scoreline. You know what I'm saying? So I think that from that standpoint, the Patriots defense, I mean, definitely looks really good. And that secondary is really good. Devin McCourty, JC Jackson. I mean, these are good names. And so if the Ravens play the Patriots, I would be just as worried about the defense. So I think yeah, that we've agreed to take the Jetsness out of it. But besides that too, I think there's a lot of positives there for sure.
Oh, I agree with you. Maybe I'm being a little harsher because I also remember the Jets actually played the Panthers week 1, who the Saints lost to, and Sam Darnold actually not Sam Darnold. Zach Wilson actually scored 2 touchdowns off of that Panthers, and the Saints only scored 1, and they absolutely crushed the Packers 38-3. So actually, Zach Wilson actually did a pretty good job against the Panthers because they only lost that game by 5. Considering the Saints lost that game by 19. So yeah, I guess like maybe that Jets team, maybe they are still bad, but maybe they're about to, I don't want to say they're about to turn the corner, but maybe they're not as bad as years before, which is, I don't know, that's still kind of sad if I think about it. Like they're still a bad team, but they've kind of slightly improved their badness. If that makes any sense at all, I don't know.
Yeah, no, they're in a rebuilding year, new quarterback, but then again, it's still
Adam. Are they in a rebuilding year like every year basically since like?
That's what I mean. It's like it's an Adam Gase thing. Like it's he's still our coach, and as
No,
long as
no, not anymore. It's Robert Saleh now. Gase got fired.
yeah, what am I saying? Shows you how little I paid attention to the Jets recently. Even that's what I mean. It's like they have been, but even though I messed up my point still stands that in the last couple of years they did have different changes made up, and which should have been good, but then obviously it's it was Adam Gase's offense, but now it's with Robert Saleh. I do think that soon, hopefully, things turn up, because I'm not a Jets fan or anything like that. Clearly, I'm openly trashing them on a podcast, but I do want to see them do better. Same with the Giants, and as I see a lot of very depressed friends and family of mine who are big Jets fans. So I live in New York, by the way, in case that wasn't clear. But so it's an interesting thing to think about, because it's you never know. As you said, it seems like they're in a rebuilding year all the time. But I am excited that they've gotten Zach Wilson, he's clearly talented, right? And he needs that support. So hopefully things get better for them. But I do think that the Patriots defense deserves credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do, again, right? Kind of my theme and how I evaluate. You should evaluate on how you perform with the opportunities given to you, right? And yeah, those, like I did say before, those interceptions are given to them. But I can't really fault them. I don't think they really did much wrong. They had 3 sacks, which I believe they gained. Yeah, they had 3 sacks. They gained 27 yards, or they cost the Jets 27 yards. I mean, at the end of the day, the Jets had like 4.4 yards per rush, which it's like okay. It's not like an amazing stat line for rushing. And when you look at the Jets offense, the best they really looked was when they were running the ball. So yeah, I'll take it. And at the very least, like it's confidence, right? It's a good confidence booster to get that kind of stat line, that kind of performance going into a game against New Orleans. So I'm happy for that. So yeah, if we can take that and use that as some motivation.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a momentum builder. I think all of us agree with that. And maybe, I'll tone down a little bit. I think it was like, I still think the Jets lost this game, but will give the Patriots more credit after like sort of thinking about it a little bit more. I don't know.
What didn't you said it would be 16-13, right?
I don't know. Like, I don't really know what to expect anymore, like from the Patriots, right? Like without Brady, it's like every game is essentially a coin flip now. And like last year, like against the Jets, who were winless at the time, it almost went into overtime. Nick Folk kicked a game-winning field goal as time expired on Monday Night Football to win that game when the Jets were still winless. And the Patriots were down by 10 in the fourth quarter. So like, that's the thing. Like, I mean, even though this team's improved, they're still unproven at this point. Because without Brady now, like you don't have that instant confidence anymore that they're going to like blow out like any team, or they're just for sure going to win games. Those days of just penciling in wins are kind of gone. Until like we sort of have like a clear answer at the quarterback position. Mac Jones could be it, but it's still kind of early to make that decision. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I did say 16-13. And I'm curious to hear what the predictions are for the Saints game. But before we talk about the Saints game, just a very interesting. So Alex Guerrero, the former quarterback for the Patriots, of course, Tom Brady, he's his personal trainer. Kind of a very interesting background. Kind of very sketchy and suspicious, to be honest. The whole TB12 method. And I don't know, we could have a whole conversation probably next week about this whole method when they play the Buccaneers and Brady comes back to Gillette. But basically Guerrero like criticized and ripped apart Belichick and said like he never gave Brady like preferential treatment, still treated him like a 20-year-old, even though he was like a 40-year-old. And yeah,
I think his emotions or feelings never evolved with age.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Like, I mean, so I guess I just wanted to talk about that. Like, what do you make of those comments right before the big game next Sunday, which I feel like everyone's kind of overlooking this game now because everyone just wants to talk about the Buccaneers, but we do have the Saints, which is going to be a difficult matchup. And also the Buccaneers are playing the LA Rams, who are also 2-0, in addition to the Buccaneers. And that's not an easy matchup at all for the Buccaneers. So the Tampa cannot afford to overlook LA either. So, but I don't know, like, what were your thoughts on those comments, like by Guerrero? Do you think it's just, what do you make of it? Sid, you can go first.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think on the whole, I thought I'd be more surprised. But knowing Belichick and sort of seeing like there's so many memes about his moods and his, the hoodie and the earphones and he's a guy who's set in his ways. And you're obviously going to have people who have issues with that, right? And I do think that Alex Guerrero seems to be making mountain of molehill instead of suggesting that the exit was this whole long-term progression thing that just built up and built up. I think there's a lot more things that play in that. So obviously this is sensational media and we have to take that into account, take it with a grain of salt. But I do think it's emblematic of how Belichick is and how, with him and his players, the relationship is no nonsense. And that doesn't mean it's a good or a bad thing. It just means that things are very honest. And sometimes, like you're seeing with Cam Newton now, it was straight up like, he had a fine year and then boom, out. Like, he's a good quarterback. And so it was
Well, he was a good quarterback. He wasn't very
okay.
good last year.
But point being that like it came out of nowhere, right? And these kinds of things, like you now, especially in the post Brady Patriots, you tend to expect these kinds of things. Like Belichick is trying to exert some level of control and some level of regularity to bring this team back to a schedule, to a system. But if with all these stories and statements, it all it says is that he's adjusting and everyone is adjusting. So it makes sense. And I think that Guerrero raises a very good point in that, like, you can't treat an elite quarterback the same way you did when he first started. You've grown with him now, and hopefully you have grown as well. But if there was that rigidity at play, it does explain a lot, and it's a fairly simple new finding that I didn't really think about before. But it makes sense. It doesn't surprise me too much knowing Belichick's personality.
Yeah, Anirban, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sid a lot. Like, it's, of course, anything that sounds even remotely critical will be very hyped up and maybe taken, to a big level, especially with us playing them very soon. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely make, when you have a player of Tom Brady's of legacy, like typically like players like that do have a bit different relationship. Like I remember reading Bill Russell's autobiography, and he was talking about the very kind of special relationship he had with Red Auerbach, where like his timing for practices would be a little different because Red knew how hard he worked during the games and stuff like that. But again, that's how Bill Belichick is. I mean, I read the book Dynasty, which he'd recommended to me over the summer, and one thing we learned is just how one of the biggest things about Bill Belichick was just like the way he's always operated is how just really ruthless and hardball he is with his players. Like even in the 90s, like early 2000s era, when you had Patriots really huge players at the time like Ty Law or Ted Johnson, or even a little later Richard Seymour, they were great for us, and then Belichick just cut them. Right? He was Ted Johnson even recently came out and talked about how ruthless he was. He didn't really care about like I mean, at least in the way he conducted his business, it was, it wasn't very sentimental, and I think that's just how he's always been. So inevitably, I'm sure that did lead to clashes. Like I remember in the book they were talking about, how he would just still go after Brady in the exact same way, criticize him in front of people and stuff like that, because that's just what he always did. And I guess at the end of the day, they had a lot of success, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and sometimes like coaches will not be their players' cup of tea, and they just have to work together to get the job done. Just like a lot of like people in life have to work with people they don't always see eye to eye with and produce. So, I mean, all I can say is like that's what life is. Like you have to be able to work with different kinds of people, and that goes both ways, I guess. And it came out pretty well for both of them. So
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, go on. I just wanted to quickly say, like, I mean, I think like this, like Guerrero criticizing Belichick is sort of like it's kind of building steam essentially for that Week 4 game. Like a lot of like hype is now being built already, and already like Tom Brady Sr., who is Brady's father, he actually spoke with Tommy Kern of NBC Sports Boston and basically talked about feeling vindicated after Brady led the Buccaneers to the Super Bowl championship last year. So now Guerrero is criticizing him. People who are close to Brady's camp are essentially ripping Belichick and the Patriots overall. So I think a lot of it's just sort of building momentum for that Week 4 matchup, building a lot of the hype and steam. So I think that's what we should just sort of take it as for now and see what happens. But I don't know, what were you saying, Sid, about that?
All I was saying is it seems like he's creating a Bollywood movie when there isn't one. I mean, it's he's building hype, as you said, adding steam, but this happens so much, even in cricket, right? Like, not to completely divert focus, but recently there was a selection meeting to select a squad for the upcoming World Cup. And, same thing, like the current captain, who is kind of a polarizing figure, like Brady too, in terms of his personality and his stats. You guys familiar with Virat Kohli, I'm guessing? Yeah. And so it's for the listener. But same thing, it's like there's a lot of debate about like, people are coming up with comments and are like adding beef when there isn't, and he might step down from captaincy later, and now people are saying, oh, the vice captain came up with some statement or whatever. And
this is a very interesting comparison, by the way, like Tom Brady and Virat Kohli, because they're both like high profile figures. Their wives are like Gisele Bundchen, Anushka Sharma. It's a very interesting comparison. I didn't even think about it like that. Yeah, like they're both like considered like among the best at their craft too, which is right. It's a very interesting comparison. I never thought about it like that, but I guess like I don't know, like cross sports, like these guys are more similar than we sometimes think, right? Even across different sports, like I don't know, like LeBron James in the NBA, right? Like he's also a very polarizing figure, very great player too. So like, right. Yeah, I mean, totally agree. I mean, what was your final point, or?
No, I was gonna say that like at any list sport, take Novak Djokovic to add to your list, right? Like when they get to that level, they are no longer just sportsmen; they are celebrities, and all these things are bound to happen. So it doesn't surprise me at all that a story like this broke, as you said, right before a big matchup. But it's it's interesting to think about, and if you want to dive deeper into it, you can. But I don't think there's too much there that changes how each of these teams are approaching their work.
Also, if we want to dive deeper, that's for next week, not this week, right? Because next week we'll have all the coverage on this matchup for sure. So yeah, but anyways, yeah, let's talk about the Saints now. So basically, which players on the Saints offense will the Patriots need to game plan most for Sunday? So at this point, I'm just going to say Alvin Kamara, because obviously Michael Thomas is on PUP. I would have said him otherwise, but he's not going to be playing this game, and I don't think the Saints' other wide receivers are that good. So yeah, just point blank, I say Alvin Kamara. He's by far the Saints' best player, and the Patriots really should follow the game plan the Panthers used last Sunday, where they essentially eliminated Kamara's impact. Like he had 8 carries for 5 yards and 4 receptions for 25 yards. And they basically forced Jameis Winston to beat him with his arm, and he couldn't do that. So I think that's what the Patriots need to do. They essentially need to eliminate Kamara from this game. And that's essentially what I'm pretty confident Bill Belichick is going to do. He's going to basically make sure Kamara is a non-factor. And then after that, he's just essentially going to just say, okay, Winston, you beat me by throwing. If you do that, then props to you. But I'm pretty confident he's betting on Winston to make a mistake there. So that's what I think the game plan is going to be essentially on the defensive side of things. Offense, it'll just kind of be, I think this might be the game, as you guys said, where Mac Jones lays, but I was talking about Saints offense. So I'll talk about that next. So Sid, I was just curious, like, what's your game plan? Is it kind of different from mine or same idea?
No, very similar. I mean, I would see, Alvin Kamara for sure. Anirban knows that one of the offensive names that I had thought there'd be a lot of potential for would be Marquis Callaway, right? I picked him in my fantasy team, and I, just reading up on his story, and he's essentially their WR1 right now, which goes to show that they're a very young receiving core. So obviously, Alvin Kamara is the most established name on that offense. And to your point, I don't think they need to necessarily plan extra for Jameis Winston, because he's the kind of guy who I don't think he even realizes what he's going to do before a game, right? Like he's so inconsistent, which makes him a very entertaining and interesting quarterback to watch. But, as you said, who knows? Maybe he decides he's going to wake up and throw 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like it changes week to week. But I think Belichick is going to get the game down to the elements he can control, which when you cut off that run game and you deal with this naive receiving bunch, you have more control with that very, very good secondary. So I think that would be a very similar game plan for me too.
Okay. And Anirban, any differences?
No, I think, it's Alvin Kamara.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, if we're all saying this, then I think Belichick's game plan is already focused on eliminating Kamara's impact from tomorrow. Sounds like it. So I guess maybe we're capable of being head coaches too one day. So anyways, next question after that. Okay, so besides Mac Jones, which players would you like to see step up on Sunday? So Anirban, let's hear you on this first.
I'd love to see Trent Brown step up. Or rather, I'd just like to see him play at all. That'd be
step
fantastic.
onto the field, I guess is the first thing.
Step onto the field. Yeah, it's I mean, yeah, I've said the offensive line. I think maybe I can just stick with that. And I think we kind of know what our defense is at this point. We are a pretty average running defense and a quite good passing defense over the first two games. So, I'll say like I like to see the O-lines maybe step up. Last week I was talking about Jacoby Myers stepping up, and maybe it's a good thing he doesn't quite have to anymore. So maybe he won't be getting 100-yard games and stuff. It might be more 40, 40, 40 between three people, and that's okay. So yeah, but I'll say maybe our O-line, Isaiah Wynn. I want to see less hurries on Mac Jones, more time in the pocket.
Yep. Well, that's good. Sid, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely want to see some of the receivers, like maybe Nelson Aguilar. We'll see how, if he did well with the Eagles, and I think he has a lot of potential, but I'd like to see some of that receiving core actually get in the game and get involved. I definitely would, I want to see more of James White and Damian Harris. I think they are good running backs and they're doing their part. I want to continue to see that. And I'm excited to see more of the secondary. I think they're doing a really, really good job for this team, and I hope that keeps going.
Definitely.
Yeah, besides Mac Jones, that's what I'd want to see.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess, the secondary is a good one, continuing to play well. And I'm just going to go with the tight ends again, like Hunter Henry had 2 catches for 42 yards, Jonnu Smith 4 for 28 yards. So this is more on Josh McDaniels. I think I want him to utilize these 2 tight ends more because you paid these guys a lot of money in the offseason. So I want them to be more involved in the game plan going forward. So yeah, and I guess we've already kind of talked about this. So maybe, just like what do the Patriots need to do to win Sunday? And we already really talked about it. Like it's just shutting down Alvin Kamara and getting pressure on Winston. And if you basically, he's capable of making a lot of mistakes, as we know over the years. So I think that's just sort of, we already kind of discussed, and getting kind of some sense of an offense going, right? Like, does anyone else have like a different, we were running sort of like long on the podcast. So I want to make sure, does anyone want to add like anything else or to that? Or I think that's kind of what we've all sort of decided. Okay. All right. Yep. And let's go with the score prediction for this game. So I'll just go quickly. So this kind of reminds me of the Broncos game from last season, where essentially the Patriots defense, it was Drew Lock and Cam Newton, and actually neither team scored a touchdown that day. It was actually a field goal battle. The Broncos ended up winning that game 18-12 with 6 field goals, which was pretty crazy. And the Patriots had 4. So I don't know. I think this game has like the type of game where it's going to come down to a lot of field goals and stuff like that. So I'm going to go with 22-16 Patriots. I think each team's going to score a touchdown, and then it's going to be field goals from that point onward. So I guess start Nick Folk and start whoever the Saints kicker is right now. At least if I was going about it. Sid, what's your prediction?
Yeah, I was going to say something. I had numbers, obviously not fully sure, but in terms of that, it's going to be a defensive battle. So you're going to see kind of a lowish scoring kind of game. I would probably go with something like, I think the Saints are going to edge just based on how they started out. I think the Saints are probably going to take it like 21-16 or 20-17, something like that.
Okay, so like a very close game. Okay, yeah.
I think.
Anirban?
I guess I'll go with 2016 Patriots.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, I don't think we have any reason to really distrust. I don't think we have enough data really just to talk about why Mac Jones can play a decent passing game. So I'm willing to give him a fly. And I know Alvin Kamara can hurt us, but we'll see how well we prepare for that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And okay, just for Sid, just wanted to include a couple questions about the Ravens. So big win for the Ravens, a lot, right, on Sunday night. Like, we kept hearing about Patrick Mahomes being Lamar Jackson's kryptonite, and in that game, your Chiefs are up 35-24 right in the fourth quarter, and you're probably thinking the same thing, like, how do we beat this guy? No. And then finally, that last touchdown by Lamar Jackson, a little bit over dramatic when he flipped over. I don't think he needed to do that to get in. And he also kind of risked injury, because when I saw the picture and I see him, like his arm, like just the one arm, like it's a really cool picture, but I'm looking at it, I'm like, John Harbaugh clearly must be like worried. And so's the Ravens like front office, because this is like your superstar. So, but big win, obviously. They won the game. He's okay. Just a little sore from what I read. But I don't know. What were your thoughts? Like, obviously, like everything that went through for that game.
Sure. No, yeah, that's after the Raiders game, I knew that the Ravens were going to have a very interesting season. I think obviously the injuries haven't been great. Marcus Peters, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, and I think
Edwards.
yep, because we it list goes on, right? And even the defensively, we had it was Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith missed out last week, I think. It's Jimmy Smith or Marlon Humphrey. One of them missed out. I think so. It's just like little components from all of the things that have gone well for the Ravens over the past, in the Lamar Jackson Ravens era. Where so it's been kind of a week by week. We'll see how it goes. Things are not looking great, but no, I'm really happy with how they pulled through. I think it was a really interesting win. Big home win. I think it is a little concerning that they let a home game go that far, but the fact that it's against the Chiefs means, yeah, makes sense. But no, that fourth quarter was insane. I thought Lamar Jackson was excellent. I thought he was very smart. I thought Harbaugh was brilliant. I think they used their weapons super well.
And then they got the defense came through with that fumble off of Mahomes at the end.
Mr. Owe, that was fantastic. Yeah, the Ravens defense, again, like as I said when I first came here, that was the height of the Ray Lewis era, right? And so seeing the Ravens and Steelers, the two big defenses of the AFC North clashing it out, and to see us slowly get that back over the past couple of years with this really solid secondary and a very, very good D-line. I think that it was good to see them pull through, and I thought it was a well-rounded win. I thought everyone played super well. Justin Tucker was good too. So I think I'm happy with what this says about how the Ravens have pulled together, and like the fact that they're more of a unit now, which is great. And obviously there's still concerns about Lamar Jackson, how much he's rushing, but I don't mind. As long as it works, it works. So
yeah, that is one thing like I am a little bit concerned about for Lamar Jackson. And full disclaimer, like during the heat of the Patriots-Ravens, like the Ravens were probably the AFC team I disliked the most, just because every time the Patriots played the Ravens, like this was a respect factor, really. Like, I mean, it was just every time, like the Ravens just knew how to go into Gillette Stadium and win playoff games. Like that's why I really disliked him. Like I had a lot of respect for Joe Flacco. I never liked Terrell Suggs, but like Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Ed Reed, like that core, like because they just always menace Brady so much. But like I mean, at the end of the day, it came down to respect. Like I mean, like that unit's always been terrific. But I really like Lamar Jackson. I think like he's a very modest guy. He's really fun to watch, and like it's just like really cool to kind of see like what he's kind of been able to overcome. I do like my only concern though for him long term is I do hope he becomes like a better passer, and it does seem like he's improving on that, because over time like he kind of reminds me of like Russell Wilson when he first entered the league. Like Russell Wilson was like a really dynamic like passer, but then like eventually he sort of like he became a really great passer. Like he was like a great runner too. Like he could pick up yards, but now he doesn't really run that much anymore. Like he's older now, and I do hope like Lamar Jackson can extend his career and he doesn't flame out, because we've seen guys like RG3, Colin Kaepernick. These guys sort of like were great mobile quarterbacks, but they just, I mean, injuries, and obviously Kaepernick is a different story altogether, like what happened to his career. But like at least for RG3, like injuries sort of mounted for him, and now he's like a back. Is he on the Ravens still, or is he somewhere else now?
No, he's not on the Ravens anymore. He was kicked out. Now we have Tyler Huntley as his number two. But yeah, I think he is. I'll tell you where he is now. I don't know. I think he's a free agent at the moment. But anyway, moving from RG3, I am glad to hear you compare Lamar Jackson to Russell Wilson and not Michael Vick, because that is the big concern. And less for, in the short term, it's good. It's winning us games. But in the long term, I mean, if that continues, then it's a fitness thing, right? Like it's not going to be sustainable for you to do that year after year after year if you want to spend 10 or 15 years in this league. So
and also mobile quarterbacks. Just one other thing on that, just to quickly say, mobile quarterbacks, like winning the Super Bowl, you can get to a Super Bowl, but like I feel in order to really win a Super Bowl or championship, you need a guy who can pass, like throw the ball. Like I mean, Patrick Mahomes, Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, like Aaron Rodgers. These are all guys. Russell Wilson, he had his defense more in 2013, but I mean, he was still a capable thrower. Like you're going to need that, like to really win a game. Like you can't rush like Lamar Jackson's doing, because right now Lamar Jackson, like the 2019 season where he won MVP, like all season long, I was like, if he can't throw like as effective, and I know he led the league in touchdown passes, but like it was still kind of like they weren't like as like dynamic as Mahomes, like in terms of like what type of passer he is. Like Mahomes is a probably the like best. I mean, him and Rodgers, like the way they can throw any like pass is remarkable. But I think like you need that type of if he can like become a better passer, and he does seem like he's getting better at that, which is good. Because if he can do that, then I think the Ravens really like have a shot at like getting to the Super Bowl. And
Don't jinx it, but yeah. No, I completely agree. I think there's a lot of good things happening, and I think I have always liked John Harbaugh as a head coach for that reason. He's very astute and he thinks about a lot of things at once.
very different than his brother, right?
Oh, tell me about it. I still remember the Super Bowl where they met and how much I hated that 49ers team. Jeez. Anyway, as you said, like it's a respect thing, that the same feeling, it's mutual. Every time we play the Pats, ever since that Billy Cundiff missed field goal, it's been an unnerving thing. And the Julian Edelman's touchdown pass, which I still don't love to this day. But anyway, that's it goes to show that I think they're thinking about a lot of things and they're coming together. And I'll hit on this point again as a unit, and I'm really, really excited for that Ravens team to keep going.
Yeah. And Anirban, do you have any thoughts on the win for the Ravens? Like big win for them?
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much covered it all. I mean, I kind of see that the same lens that would be like a Bills victory over them, right? That like for the last few years, you've kind of had the idea in the AFC, you have the Chiefs, and then everyone else is slightly below it. So the idea is how you get those other teams to get a little closer and closer. And we saw like the Browns give the Chiefs a good run for their money. I think they could be pretty fun this year. Saw the Ravens just beat them. So all that means is the AFC is just going to be as competitive as ever this season, and that's great.
Yeah, and especially in the AFC North, I think this point hasn't been stated yet, but in the AFC North, every team is 1-1. So the Ravens also avoided going to 0-2 because that division, like I know Cincinnati's still rebuilding, but Cleveland's a playoff team now. They're a legit team. As Pittsburgh had that playoff game win last year, right? I'm just curious, were you cheering for Cleveland or Pittsburgh?
Cleveland. I was cheering for Cleveland because of how much I hate the Steelers. I mean, this has nothing to do with the Browns. This is like, if any other team was in that position, right now, like it used to be the Pats that I was like, oof, no, but now it's the Steelers. And also because of how cocky they were and Juju's comments and everything. It's like, no, Browns want to win.
Logo. Remember he used to stomp on the logo and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. And not just that. I think like so I was a little worried about the Browns, and the Ravens were like we're teetering on the playoff kind of edge for a large part of the season. Then I was like a little worried about the Browns. But when it became clear the Ravens would make the playoffs, then I was very much hoping the Browns would beat the Steelers.
Yeah, I think everyone wanted that game, but that was one of the best games I've ever seen. Like, it was such a great game to watch. Like, watch Pittsburgh just like make those mistakes. I think the Browns defense got 4 interceptions. I remember it was 28-0 in the first quarter, which was remarkable. Yeah, that was very cool. So, and just the last thing, they do play the Detroit Lions. The Lions were 0-2, lost to the Packers on Monday night. So, just a score prediction for the Lions-Ravens game. Sid, what are you expecting?
I think it's going to be an offensive blowout. I think I like the Lions. I feel very bad for the Lions because they play all these very good games and they lose. So like the Chargers for that matter. But anyway, I think it's going to be a big game. I think we're seeing something like I back the Ravens, but something like 35-28 or 35-30, something like that.
So you're expecting the Lions to score?
I mean I'm probably anti-jinxing myself giving but I do think we're going to see a high octane offensive game. So if it's less than 28, I will be very happy. I would love to be proven wrong, but I think they're going to fix things up. Jared Goff is not a quarterback who can sit quiet. He's and he has a lot of offensive weapons. So I think that's an offense that likes to big games that go into so the Ravens defense is good, but Lions will find a way to score and we'll keep it interesting, I think.
Okay. And Anirban, what's your pick?
I'll also go with the Ravens. I mean, I'm also a little disappointed with how the Lions started the season. I was definitely expecting maybe a little more, but I think we'll see. I think DeAndre Swift is a very talented running back still, and I enjoy watching him. And I still think Amon-Ra St. Brown will be quite good. It might just take a lot of the season to get there, but I'm sure we'll see what he has to offer. So I'll go. I'll go like 35 to like 15 or something. I'm expecting, just there's, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much echo the same sentiment as the Anirban. So I don't think they should have any issue with the Lions, and I'm expecting big performances from Lamar Jackson, and I hope Tyson Williams, because I have him on my fantasy team. So the Lions' run defense is really bad. So I'm going with Ravens 38, Lions 21. I think the Lions will probably just get some late scores that make it semi-close, but yeah, I expect the Ravens to win this game this week. But anyways, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for coming on, and of course you're welcome to come on anytime you want. Like next week, for example, is a big matchup against the Buccaneers. So yeah, we can coordinate another time when you want to come on. Maybe next week, even if you're willing to come just for the matchup, or we'll find some other week that works. But no, it was great having you on, hearing the Ravens' perspective. And just one last thing, I guess you kind of touched upon it, but since you sort of saw Brady and Belichick from afar, and mostly in the rivals' viewpoint, but for the listeners, since this is mainly Patriots supporters, I guess, who usually listen to this, what's sort of your takeaway as sort of someone who kind of watches this dynasty from afar? What were your sort of main takeaways? You can say if you really disliked them, or what were the key takeaways you kind of took as kind of an outsider from this?
That's a good question. And this has happened in a few other sports too. So Anirban knows that in soccer, we're fans of a team that is super great, right, Anirban?
Oh, Arsenal! You're an Arsenal as well?
An Arsenal fan.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to look at teams that are better than you, right? And this happens in cricket too. We had Australia that was dominant for decades, literal decades, and there's a little bit of a sense of fear, but also an excitement thing whenever the Patriots play. You want to see them lose, but there's a part of you that really wants to see just Brady, because he's such a superstar. And it pains me to admit that, but as I think I told you this before we started recording, that I grew up being a fan of Peyton Manning. I think he has an incredible story, and he's an incredible guy, and I always liked seeing that foil of Brady versus Manning. Brady's no question a better quarterback, but I think that Manning, it was great to see those two kind of go head to head and have that rivalry within the AFC. And when Manning came back after his injury and won that Super Bowl with the Broncos, that was one of my favorite seasons to watch, because it was still Brady was at his peak. He was doing really well with the Patriots, and but it's a mix of both. I think it's a mix of a little bit of a friendly hatred. We don't love Brady winning because he wins too much, but it's kind of mesmerizing, right? And you could say that about Belichick too. I have an immense amount of respect for Bill Belichick. I think he's done something incredible with the Patriots over the last 20 years. But from an outsider's standpoint, it's, I think, what you'd expect, right? It's a rivalry. It's a persistent rivalry that I think stems from an appreciation for what they're able to do. We wouldn't be so interested in watching them and hopefully seeing them lose if we didn't know that you expect them to win, right? The expectation is that they win. So that's what makes a loss so much more exciting for us. But yeah, it's great. And I think it's still kind of scary that he's still so good with the Buccaneers right now, Tom Brady. But credit to him. And it's just, we talked about Novak Djokovic, we talked about so many others who are just somehow breaking every record in the record book. So it's good stuff, but hopefully it calms down soon. I don't want to see
soon, it could be the next 6 years, because Brady's now talking about playing until 50.
I don't want to see him play until he's 50. That would really not be, that would be way too, that's beyond my imagination. Next 3 years, that's enough.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, but no, Sid, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was really awesome to speak with you and Anirban as usual. And we will be back next Saturday discussing the Saints game and previewing the Tampa Bay game, which everyone is excited for, I think. So until then, have a good weekend, everyone, and we will be back next week. Stay safe, guys. Bye.